Hey there, it is Petey again. Welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be yet another different kind of video than what I've done so far. This is going to be a book haul video. This is something that I have seen booktubers do. And it makes sense for me to do this now because I just got back from a trip, and a consequence of that trip was a lot of books. And so, like the current readings video, this is not going to have a lot of high production value. In fact, very little production is going to go into this. Very little preparation is going into this.
Bull.
However, there will be props. Okay? I do have some props for you this time around. But look, another reason that I want to do this kind of video and do it on occasion is, like with the current readings one, it's just another way to expose a lot of books that will not otherwise see the light of day on this channel, because there's no way, right, that I can review every book that I read.
Man's got to know his limitations.
And it may be the case that one or two of these, right, might get a proper review in the future. Who knows? But, all right, so the way I have done this, excuse me, is I've broken this down into location and then genre within location, with the exception of my Goodwill haul, because I don't have multiples from any genre there. So that's how I'm going to do this. And we'll start off chronologically in the sense of where I was first on the trip. And that was St. Louis. So the first... It's a baby just outside my window. I'm guessing there's a parent with the baby. I'm not going to go check, okay? Alright, so first place was St. Louis. And it was a bookstore called Bookhouse. And while I was not crazy about a lot of their prices, I did find a gem from there. And this is, so we're starting with the big and sexy, and I literally mean big and sexy. So let's start with sex first. All right. So first one to talk about here is, I got to be careful because I could go on and on. Honestly, I've got to be careful about a lot of these because I could spend forever talking about, for some of these, a very long time. So, all right. So first, the sexy. That's sperm wars, infidelity, sexual conflict, and other bedroom battles. So, all right. Let me really try to be brief here what this is about. So, within evolution, most of you are going to know there's something called natural selection. Well, there is a subset of selection called sexual selection, and that has to do with how, especially competition for mates, can drive evolutionary change. Okay, and so most people are going to be familiar with, especially like the dominant paradigm in mammals, especially. You'll have males competing over females usually. There are exceptions out there, but those tend to just be exceptions that prove the rule, and the rule is, in most species, most mammals, let me stick with mammals here, okay? And this is largely going to cover mammals. This book largely covers mammals anyways. But for mammals, you have competition, sexual competition, that usually takes place between the males because they are competing over access to females. And what this does, and this isn't just Baker's idea, right? He's collating, bringing together a lot of past research. And what's good about this is there was an older edition of this work, and this is a new one, and it's updated with an afterword and a new preface. Sorry, I got off track. That's going to happen. All right, so what's going on here? So the idea is supposed to be that you have the competition that exists at the organism level, okay, the mate competition. Well, there's also competition that occurs at another level down, and that is the gamete level. And gametes are the sperm and the eggs. And so, as it says, right, sperm wars, the idea is supposed to be that sperm will compete, right, over getting access to the eggs. Now, here's the thing. What you will see is, in some mammal species, the females, and largely really probably talking about primates here, females will mate with multiple males.
Excellent!
Within short periods of time, so that the idea is supposed to be here so that the sperm from each of these individual males in there are competing for access to the female's egg. Now look, some aspects of this are still controversial. It's not This isn't wide. Well, I'm in danger of going too far on this subject. So that's what this book is about. Maybe in the future I'll go into more of this because there are controversial aspects to this view. So maybe of all these, I might give this one a proper book review. We'll see. Okay. But that's the sexy. So let's move on to the big. For this, I need my first prop. All right. By the way, this smells like chocolate and tastes like chocolate too. So, is YouTube going to hit me with like a tobacco thing or something on this? Oh well. Okay. To the big. Okay. I should say that real quick. I've wanted a set of this for a long time to have in my collection, but generally the cost has just been too prohibitive. And so the gem that I was talking about that I did find in this place was this set for a very good price. So even if I wasn't happy with a lot of those prices I had seen, this right here made the trip there worth it. Okay, so, all right, here we go. All right. This is Winston Churchill's The Second World War. Okay? It's his set. It's his set. It's my set now. So what this is it's Churchill's memoirs, and really it's more than that. It's its own. I mean, it's a bona fide history of the origins of World War II, World War II itself, and then the aftermath of World War II. But it's also Churchill's memoirs, and I do believe he won the Nobel Prize in Literature for this. So I was very pleased to find this, especially for the price that I did. And the books themselves are in excellent condition. They rocked, not so much, okay? But that's okay because I couldn't argue with the price of this. This was a catch, so we're very happy to get this. Okay. Well, it really is chocolate, basically. I'm going to smoke that later. Okay, so that was the Bookhouse. All right. The next leg of my journey took me to my hometown. And I am sorry, but I can't remember the name of this bookstore I'm about to talk about. And it's a shame because it's a really interesting place. I didn't know it existed in my hometown. And when I discovered it, a friend of mine decided to go there. We decided to go there, and we got there right at opening time, and there was no one in there, and it was hot, and the place is very disheveled. So my friend joked later that he thought for sure we were going to come around the corner and there'd be like an employee that had been dead for days right there or something. But no, in fact, the owner was there. He just was in the bathroom for like 15 minutes while we were in there. But one of the things about this place is there was very little categorization, and there were no prices on anything. So, I didn't know. So what I did was I just kind of got a handful of things, and I would go, at the end I went up to him, and he was on the computer playing Go, and I said, how much? And he just goes, $10. And it turned out everything in that store was $1. So, and the thing is though, what's even funnier to me about that whole exchange is he did that. He said 10. I gave him cash, and he did nothing else. There was no computer that he punched anything on. So I don't know how the guy is keeping track of his stock. Maybe he's got a photographic memory. I don't know. But that was it. I gave him cash, and then I walked out with these books. All right, so let me talk about the books now. Wow, really chocolatey, that cigar. Okay. Fiction first. I only got one fiction from there. That is Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead. So, believe it or not, I have been reluctant to read Rand's famous big novels, The Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged, of course. I have read her works on objectivist philosophy, and because I have some issues with that philosophy, and even though I would consider myself a small L, no, that's not true. I have sympathies with small L libertarianism, let's put it that way. I've just, the size of these, and the fact that I've heard they're not actually that well written, right? It's more about the ideas in them, and that's usually that's something I can get behind, as I'll talk about a little bit with Isaac Asimov. But finally, I was like, okay, this thing's $1. Let me go ahead and at least get the Fountainhead. All right, and I'll finally read this at some point, and then eventually I will get to Atlas Shrugged. So that was my one fiction. Okay, the next one here, maybe some of you won't count, because it is a graphic novel. It is Persepolis, the story of a childhood. And this is actually part 1. So there's a part 2 of this. I think it's called The Story of Adulthood, and it's a blue cover. And I was really hoping he would have that, because to get this for $1, that was a pretty good steal, I think. So like I said, it's a graphic novel. And just real quick, this is about at least part 1. I'm not quite sure what part 2 is about or what it covers. But this is about a young Iranian girl growing up during the Iran-Iraq War, and all the trials and tribulations that come from that. All right, so now let's do history.
I used to hate history, didn't you? It's all just a load of stuff that's already happened.
I had 2 history books from there. First, John Meacham's biography of Papa Bush. I was a little hesitant to get this because I have John Meacham's famous biography of Hamilton, the one that Lin-Manuel Miranda read and basically built the Hamilton the Hamilton musical off of. But I haven't been able to finish that. I've tried. I've started it over and over. I think I've finished half of it. There's just something about it that I can't get past. I don't know if it's Meacham's writing style, or I'm not sure what it is. So that's why when I saw who the author of this was, I was like, I don't know. But again, for $1,
I'd buy that for $1.
I might as well, right? Of course, I didn't know it was just $1 at the time, but I think if it had been more than that, maybe I wouldn't have picked it up. So, got that. All right. Okay. So, and I'll let you read that title there. So this is a book about Maimonides, who was a medieval Jewish philosopher / theologian. Well, philosopher, theologian in the medieval time, basically. They were the same thing. Okay. Why do I have this? Well, so this is published by Brill. Now they are an academic publisher who famously have very, very high prices for their stuff. And this looks like it was a dissertation. So, especially because this ended up being $1, you can't find. I went and looked what the price was for this used on Amazon. It's $50, and that's not surprising for Brill. And I thought, okay, if this is cheap, I will get it. And like I said, everything in there was $1. So again, why not? When am I going to ever actually break this open and read it? I don't know. Okay, but I mean, I may. Okay, there may be a time that comes when I'll need to do that. All right. So philosophy, and I am going to move through these quick. I'm not going to say too much here. Again, probably going to do that with most of the philosophy books I picked up. Okay, first one here is William James's Essays in Radical Empiricism. So William James was a famous American philosopher. American pragmatism was he contributed to the development of American pragmatism, I should say. He's one of the big contributors to that. I have his major works like Will to Believe and some other things, but I didn't have his essays in Radical Empiricism. So even though the book isn't in the best shape, and I don't know how much longer that's going to last, wow. I just saw, that's the thing about, right, when you, and this is going to come up again because I'm going to show you something from one of the books I got from Goodwill. So this evidently was a book at the Harvard Bookstore at one time. It's just a reminder, right, these books had lives. Many of these books had lives before me. They are going to have, all my books are going to have lives after me, right? They're going to outlive me, which is kind of a strange thing to think about, but they are. Anyways, so that's, all right, now we got Carl Jung, Man and His Symbols. Okay, Carl Jung, psychologist. He was a student of Freud, but like what happens with most master-student relationships, sometimes the student will repudiate a lot of the ideas of the master.
When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master.
That happened with Jung. He developed this, idea of collective unconsciousness and blah, blah, blah. For another day, okay? But for $1, I didn't have this, so now I have it in my collection. Then we have Jürgen Habermas, The Theory of Communicative Action. And this comes in 2 volumes. This is a famous work of Habermas's that I didn't have. This is a important work in continental philosophy and in communication studies and in rationality studies as well. So, got that. Last thing from there, I think. Let me make sure I didn't screw up. Yes, okay. George Lakoff, Women, Fire, and Dangerous Things. Women, fire, and dangerous things. They're all dangerous. What categories reveal about the mind? Lakoff is he was a linguist. I don't know what. Is he still alive? I don't know if he's still alive or not. But anyways, he was a linguistics professor. I have a couple of his other works. And this basically what this is work in linguistics, linguistic anthropology, even philosophy of mind. And this was one of the major works of his I didn't have. So again, to get this for $1, pretty amazing. I wish I could remember the name of that bookstore, but I don't. Yeah. I'll go back to it though in the future, of course, when I'm back in my hometown, and I'll make sure to get what the name of the place is. Maybe it didn't even exist. I don't know. This is all a fever dream, simulation, something. All right, Goodwill. So when I'm in my hometown, there are 2 Goodwills there. One in the southern part of my town and the northern part, and I will always go there. I know there are Goodwills everywhere, right? But when I am there visiting my family, I will visit these 2 Goodwills and see what's there book-wise and movie-wise too. I'm a movie person as well. So, all right. Like I said, this one is not this one I don't have broken down in genre because there wouldn't be any reason to. Okay, the first thing is the Quran. Okay, and this is the Oxford World's Classics edition of the Quran. Why? If some of you already know, right? If you've watched my previous videos, I have 2 versions of the Quran. And why in the world am I getting? Why did I get a 3rd one? Well, all right, so that I could do some nasty, irreverent things to it, like the following. Exhibit A, Exhibit B. I'm not going to do that. I'm in enough trouble it is with some elements of the Muslim community from my last video, so I wouldn't do that. So look, in all seriousness, the reason I got this is because, as great as hard books are, book people will know that, you want. It's nice to have something that's malleable like this, right? And something that's smaller that you can take with you and such. So, and that's why I have, and maybe someday a good top 10 video to do will be top 10 books I have in my collection that I have multiple versions of for this reason right here. Okay, but that's why I got it. And also, it's a different translation, so I've got 3 translations of the Quran now. It's really I was really surprised to find this in my hometown's local Goodwill. It makes me curious about who had this, right? Who gave it to them, traded in, or whatever. Last thing from there, I think. Let me make sure I didn't screw up. Yes. Okay. Okay. So next one here. No. This is when I screw up here. This is what happens when you don't, I guess, do enough preparation. This I got at the other store, the place where everything was $1. I don't know how it got into my Goodwill stuff here, but it's just, I'll be real quick here. This is Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. This is an important work in Native American historiography. It's a history from the perspective of Native Americans, in terms of the whole conflict in the West, all right, between the settlers, U.S. Army, and all of that. I used to have this in my collection, but it was a victim of the great book purge my library went through about 15 years ago. And I have, since that time, slowly and steadily been reincorporating things that I got rid of at that time that I regret that I did. This is one of those, so to find it for $1, so So again, I screwed that up. That was not at the Goodwill. All right. Desmond Morris, dog watching. So Desmond Morris was a zoologist / anthropologist. He wrote a work called The Naked Ape, which for me was very formative in my own thought, because while it's dated, I don't know why I'm looking back. Well, do I have? I think it is on the shelf somewhere. But anyways, while it's dated because it was written in the 70s, and a lot of things he was speculating about then, maybe one or two of those things still has some validity to it. Most of that doesn't. Nevertheless, it was one of the earliest works I read on hominin / human evolution, and also I really love his writing. So if I see something by Desmond Morris, I will get it. So I got this, dog watching, and this isn't just like a naturalist guide thing of, here's how to identify this species of canine or whatever. No, this actually is more than that. It's about canine evolution, the history of domestication of the dogs vis-a-vis humans. So yeah, I was happy to find that. All right. Next one here is Walk in the Woods by Bill Bryson. Now, I actually already listened to an audiobook version of this, and usually what I do is, if I listen to an audiobook and I really enjoyed it, I will plan to get a physical copy of it in the future to actually have, in my physical library. So that's why I got this. So this is about Bryson and a buddy of his and their attempt to do the Appalachian Trail, hike the Appalachian Trail. That's something I would love to do someday. And in fact, there was a movie made based on this, starring Robert Redford and Nick Nolte. Redford plays Bill Bryson. It's okay. And what the thing I want to point out here is that, what's nice sometimes when you get these used books is the stuff you find in them. And in this one, there's like this little postcard. I assume it's somewhere in Appalachia, Smoky Mountains or something. And there's a nice little thing here on the back. I'm not going to read the personal part of this, but what's cool is whoever did this gave a little Sherlock Holmes quote. So I want to read that. Education never ends, Watson. It is a series of lessons with the greatest for the last. Okay, so Walk in the Woods. All right. Next one here is The Murder of Tutankhamun by Bob Breyer. So, I am a subscriber to the Great Courses, which it's called One Germ now, but it's going to go back to being called the Great Courses. I have been for a long time. I used to get them when they were, just audio discs and stuff. And he has a great one that's an Egyptology one of the Great Courses.
What I'm going to do this first lecture is I will try to explain to you why it's the right thing to study Egypt, why it's a good thing. But I'll also explain to you how we know what we know about Egypt.
It is a little dated, and so this is too. I think, what was this, 98, okay, was when this came out. And here's the thing. The problem here is that today, just about no Egyptologist buys the hypothesis that King Tut was murdered. But Breyer did not have handy to him, the great advancements we've made in things like paleogenetics, okay, and advances in ancient pathologies, okay. And so that's kind of why I'm like, I already know that the consensus now is that King Tut died by pretty much, fairly natural means, and it wasn't due to foul play. But what I try to do is, if I listen or watch a Great Courses and I really do enjoy it, I want to have at least one work of that person's in my library. So that is ultimately why I picked this up, even though I know, right, that this is going to be really dated and it just doesn't. This hypothesis no longer holds a lot of water. So, all right, this next one is On the Move by Oliver Sacks. Oliver Sacks was a famous neurologist who wrote, many books about the brain, especially his specialty typically was to write about what we would think of as abnormalities that arise from the brain. So he's got to work on hallucinations, and so stuff like that he did. So I love, so The Awakenings is probably my favorite of his he wrote. That's also got a really awesome movie that was adapted from it that stars Robin Williams. A lot of people don't know about. I mean, that's a future video to do. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, Anthropologist on Mars. These are all great works by Oliver Sacks. This is one of the 3 or 4 memoirs that he wrote. So I was happy to find one of his memoirs at my hometown's Goodwill. All right, last thing from the Goodwill. Sorry. Okay, last thing from the Goodwill. Well, nothing. What could this be? Well, the Gospel according to St. John, Anchor Bible Commentary for chapters 13 through 21. So this is a 2-volume work. This is the 2nd volume of this Anchor Bible Commentary on the Gospel according to John. So maybe someday I'll go into this more, but my original academic field was biblical studies, and I used to have a lot of the Anchor Bible commentaries because they're my favorite of the set of commentaries you can get on the Bible. I used to have a lot of these, and they too were victims of that great book purge I mentioned just a bit ago. And the thing that kind of sucks about these is the price, especially if you are getting the first big 5, that is the first 5 books of the Old Testament / Hebrew Bible, the Torah, or any of these Gospels or some of Paul's epistles. They cost a lot. Now, if you get something like Lamentations, okay, you can find that pretty cheap. But all those other ones, you're going to pay a good penny for. And so, anytime I see one of these somewhere like a Goodwill for I think this was $3. It's like yes. So I nabbed it, got it. Happy to have this. All right, that's my Goodwill haul. All right, so last place. Sorry, let me. I know it would be a good place to edit, wouldn't it? But as I said, okay. So I am from Tennessee.
Rocket Top! Woo!
And when I go to Tennessee, if I am in the Nashville area or the Chattanooga area, I go to a wonderful place, okay, called Mckay's. They also have a location in Knoxville, but I've never been to that one. So they have 3 locations in Tennessee. And it's one of these places where you can trade in things. And they have massive amounts of books. They have massive amounts of media. They have all kinds of stuff. Okay? And when I go, I usually take stuff that I trade in, because from time to time I do that. Some of my books I will, we'll go into my method about when I do get rid of books and stuff. I don't do that for this video. And so when I go, I get obviously a lot of books. That's what I'm about to talk about. But I also get other media because I am a movie person, and I've got a decent sized movie collection. So I'll usually grab some movies as well. And I did this trip, but this is not a media haul video. This is a book haul video. So let's talk about what I got from Mckay's. All right, let's do the fiction first. So I have never read, believe it or not, any of Cormac McCarthy's works, and I want to remedy that. So I had it in mind that I was going to get No Country for Old Men if they had that, and that be my first McCarthy book, but they didn't have it. I think all they had was Blood Meridian, maybe one other, and then this one, The Road. And I saw the movie when it came out, however long ago that was now. I enjoyed the movie. So I decided, okay, this seems like a good place to start. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It should be a relatively easy read, quick read. So that's got that. All right, next one here. Asimov's Foundation's Edge. So I am a huge fan of Asimov's original Foundation trilogy. Maybe a bit, Kermit's. By the way, say hey to Kermit. He will be supervising my videos from here on for the foreseeable future. I guess until you're satisfied with what I'm doing, right? Yeah? Okay, high five. He's kind of covering up here. Let's see. So, I got to show this, even though this isn't that kind of video. So, Asimov's original Foundation trilogy. This is one of my favorite editions of this. I have another edition of this too, Everyman edition. But I love this. I mean, this is just a wonderful, beautiful work of craftsmanship. This edition, okay, of Asimov's Foundation trilogy. It really is. But the thing is, in addition to get that in there. Sorry. All right. So you have the original 3, and then much later, Asimov went and wrote, I believe, 1 prequel and then 3 sequels. Maybe it's 2 and 2. Not quite sure about that. I've been reluctant to read those because I've heard they're not as good as the original, and that because he wrote them so much later, it created a lot of inconsistencies with the original trilogy. But I'm ready to get over that. You know, a couple months ago, I went ahead and got that prequel, Prelude to Foundation. I haven't read it yet, but I decided I'm going to read these. And so Foundation's Edge here that I picked up is, I believe, the first sequel that comes after the original trilogy. And it was only $1.
I'd buy that for $1.
By the way, I think in the future, for any of the Mckay's trips I take, because they do come with little stickers with the prices that are easy to take off, fortunately. I hate that. I buy a used book from Amazon or something, and it's plastered with stickers. Or when they don't tell me that it was a library book, and then I have the whole... Anyways, that's another...
Squirrel!
Continue with Asimov. This I was very happy to find. And the other thing I'm about to talk about, Asimov's Complete Stories, Volume 1. There are 2 volumes to this. And what these are is a collection of Asimov's short stories. And some of those are quite good. And then the next one here is also a collection of short stories, and it's the Complete Collection of Short Stories. And like that, the Asimov one, which is Volume 1. And it's Arthur C. Clarke. I love Arthur C. Clarke as well. Okay? So this was a great find for me. All right, that's the fiction. All right, economics.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone?
Only got one thing from economics.
The Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which, anyone raised or lowered? Raised tariffs.
And that is John Maynard Keynes' General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money. So this is a famous work within economics.
In an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression.
I have pretty much all the major works in economics.
Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone seen this before?
Classical works in economics.
The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve...
I put off getting this one for a long time because the kind of person who likes all the bells and whistles to a classic work, right? That's why I love the Penguin editions, the Oxford World Classics, the Norton editions. You know, you get a nice little beefy introduction to the work. A lot of times you'll get annotations, you'll get notes. I love that kind of thing. To me, that's like the special features, right, on a DVD, Blu-ray, or 4K disc or something. But I don't think there is one for General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money, which is kind of strange. So I saw this, I was like, oh, that's a nice little hardback edition. Let's finally pick that up now. Well, that's why I got that. Okay, next section here is evolution. So my main field I work in, that I'm doing my PhD in, is philosophy. One of my areas in that is evolution stuff, evolutionary theory. And so I will always, I'm always getting stuff on evolution. And so I got 2 this time around from Mckay's. First of these is Sean B. Carroll's The Making of the Fittest. DNA and the Ultimate Forensic Record of Evolution. Unfortunately, this is a little dated now. 2006, I think. Yes, 2006. Thing is, things move fast in the world of evolutionary biology, but Sean B. Carroll is an important figure in what's called the Evo-Devo movement. And maybe sometime in another video, I will go into what that is, okay? But the bottom line is, I only have a couple of his works, and this is one of his major works in that area, in that field, so it was time to get it, and so I did for a good price. All right, the second one here on evolution I got is David Quammen, The Tangled Tree, Radical New History of Life. Okay, let me try and be quick in explaining what this is. This is another thing I could talk about any of this stuff for a long time. All right, so So there is something called horizontal gene transfer that can take place. Okay, you can have genes jumping genes is an example of this. Have you ever heard about jumping genes? And it was thought that in terms of the evolutionary history of our life, or life on this planet, that horizontal gene transfer was, some people didn't think it was possible, but even if people thought it was possible, they thought it was a rare thing. And what we have discovered, I mean, I had done this research, and that's what this guy's doing here. He's not a biologist, but he's a great writer. I've got he did a nice little short biography on the Reluctant Mr. Darwin, called The Reluctant Mr. Darwin. So, short biography on Darwin called The Reluctant Mr. Darwin. What was I saying? All right, so some people thought, well, even if horizontal gene transfer was a possibility, it was rare, and it didn't contribute that much to the evolution of life on this planet. Well, turns out those people were wrong, and research has shown that no, horizontal gene transfer, not only is it common, right, it's common, but it has significantly contributed to the evolution of life on this planet. So that's what this book is about. Putting forward, basically collating, right, that research that has shown that, talking about it. All right, we have 2 categories left here. Let's do my philosophy, because I'm going to run through, like I said, the philosophy stuff. I'm going to run through these quick. This is talked about William James a little bit earlier. This is another famous American pragmatist. That's John Dewey. This is his work, Experience in Nature. This is a major work of his that I did not have in my library. So, boom, that's why I got it. Like, oh, okay. Can add to my Dewey stuff, my my American pragmatist philosophy. So, got that. Then we have, casually, we have Hilary Putnam's Representation and Reality. So Hilary Putnam is a famous philosopher in what is called the analytic tradition. That's largely the tradition I'm in as well. And he was largely a paper writer. I've got 3 volumes over there of his papers, and that generally is the case with analytic philosophers. They tend to be less book writers and more paper writers. And so this is, I believe, the only book of his he wrote. Maybe he wrote one other book, but this might be the only book of his I wrote, and I didn't have it in my collection. And this is, somebody may be able to guess right by the title, this is a work in the philosophy of mind. Putnam is a really interesting figure because he was one of these philosophers who changed his mind a hell of a lot. To the extent that when you were talking about Putnam and his views, you have to specify, wait, are we talking about Putnam 1, that means Putnam from this era who had these views, or Putnam 2, or Putnam 3, Putnam 4? That's how often this guy changed his mind. Alright, that's that. Okay. Next one here is Brain Trust. I don't think you can read the subtitle there. What Neuroscience Tells Us About Morality. This is by Patricia Churchland. She also has a famous husband, Paul Churchland. And they are what are called eliminativists in the philosophy of mind. It's another area I work in. They are hardcore reductionists, basically. And what this book is, as the subtitle says, it's trying to basically give a reductionist account of morality and moral thinking from using neuroscience, I should say. That's what this is. The original, I think it was the late 80s is when the first version of this came out. So this is a Princeton Science Library reprint. They do these of major sort of scientific, philosophical works. And usually the author, as in the case here, will give a new preface. And so it's nice to have that. Okay, last work of philosophy, actually philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, it overlaps with all of those. So, and that is Antonio Damasio's Looking for Spinoza, Joy, Sorrow, and the Feeling Brain. Okay, I have a couple of his works already. I didn't have this one. I try and be quick here in explaining this. So, you know, some people sort of have this simplistic or naive view that, you know, reason is something that's over here, emotions or feelings are something that's over here, and neither the two should ever meet, right? Well, what research has shown over the past 40 years now, something like that, is right. That's not the case, and to some extent, that's not a huge revelation because somebody as long ago as David Hume made the famous statement, "Reason ought to be the slave of the passions." But just to give you a real quick example, what I'm talking about here is that you know, you have various areas of your brain. You have the prefrontal cortex. That's where most of your sort of decision-making, rational thinking takes place, right? And then you have various sort of emotional areas of the brain. We've had people we, in terms of humanity, I guess. I didn't do any of this research. There have been people who have had their emotional centers of their brain knocked out, and yet, right, the prefrontal cortex stayed intact. And you might think, if you have that naive view, think of the whole Spock thing. And I love Star Trek. I don't need to be dissing on Star Trek here, but Spock is kind of the consummate example of this, of someone who's claiming he was just using logic and right didn't let emotions or feeling come into it. And then that's why you get the interesting dynamic right between him and Shatner. And there's like 3 or 4 episodes of classic Star Trek, right, where Shatner talks a computer to death, basically. Anyways, all right, so we have people have these emotion centers knocked out, but they have their rational faculties basically remain intact. And you would think, okay, if you're going with the whole Spock thing, this is going to be the most rational person ever. Well, it turns out that those kinds of people cannot operate in the world. You take them to somewhere like a McDonald's and look at the menu, all right, and they got to make a decision about something to get. Basically, what will happen is they will freeze up. Cannot make a decision. Okay, so that because a lot of times, right, for that kind of thing, that's where you need a little bit of something that goes, I shouldn't say beyond, because that's kind of mystical, but right, something that's going to aid, going to help out your rational faculties, and that's in part what the emotions, what our feelings do.
Fascinating.
I didn't mean to go on about that. So, okay. This is the last section. We'll be wrapping up this book haul video. Still got the chocolate taste in my mouth from that cigar, which I will be smoking once we're done here with this video. Because I can't let that go to waste. That was a birthday cigar that was gifted to me. Okay, so this is history. Alright, so first thing here is C. Vann Woodward's The Future of the Past. C. Vann Woodward was a famous Southern historian, historian of the South, and I mean in the American South. He wrote on topics like Reconstruction, Jim Crow era, things like that. What this is a collection of some of his most famous papers on those kinds of topics. So I was like, yeah, some of you may be able to guess, right? Not even guess, you should be able to infer based on things I've just said a little bit ago. I am a Southerner.
Rock it top!
So, about that. Alright, 1914 was the centennial of the origins of World War I, and you had a whole spate of books that came out about World War I, the origins of World War I during that time. This was one of those. You also had a slew come out in 1918, which was the centennial of the end of World War I. I sort of had burnt because I have read a lot on the origins of World War I spent a lot of time trying to get myself straight about how I thought about that, and I burned myself out on the topic. And so it's really been a while since I have read anything on the origins of World War I. But I have heard this is one of the better ones that came out of that flood of books, and that's The Sleepwalkers, and especially because this was only, I believe, 75 cents. So yeah, I'm hoping there is something fresh and new in here for me, but we'll see. Like I said, I've read a lot of literature on that, and it's not clear to me if there really is anything new to say or not. So, but I got that. Okay. This was one of the things I was most excited to see, and it's the one of these books that I've already read. I finished this a few days ago. That's The Way of Herodotus. Travels with the man who invented history. So Herodotus, Cicero famously called him the father of history. So what the histories was about, ostensibly, was the Greco-Persian Wars, and that's the wars that culminated in the Battle of Salamis, or really the Battle of Plataea. It's the one that included the famous Battle of Thermopylae with the 300 Spartans, although there were Thebans and others there, right? Sometimes get left out of that story. But it's much more than that. Like, Herodotus is famous for his digressions, and he's got a lot of digressions, and he's got a fascination with sex too, and so you get these really interesting stories. Right, so for example, one of his digressions, he's got a whole chapter on Egypt, and it doesn't really tie into what's supposed to be his narrative about, right, the war between Persians and Greeks. But anyways, so what this is, and I finally read Herodotus' Histories a couple months ago. I hadn't done that, which is a shame, given I have a master's in history. Only 2 months ago, I finally read Herodotus. But what this is a guy who took Herodotus' book, Histories, with him, and he's retracing the steps. And so I was really kind of excited for this, and unfortunately, I'm a little disappointed in it. No, I'm a lot disappointed in it. Maybe that's because my expectations were high. I'm going to keep this for now because I have some reasons for why I would want to revisit this in the future. But my biggest problem here is he tries a little too hard. No, he does. I mean, not a little too hard. He tries too hard to sort of fit Herodotus into a modern mold. Okay, and it just there's some times when maybe that works, but most of the time it doesn't. So that was one of the things that kind of disappointed me with this. All right, last thing here, and this right here is part of what makes browsing for books, why browsing for books can be such a wonderful experience. And that's because, most of this that I have talked about are things that I already had on my mind. I was already on the lookout for. I already knew about them. I had no idea about this thing. And the thing is, it's right up my alley. And this was a Pulitzer Prize winner, and I'd never heard of this. This is Annals of the Former World. So I said this was in the history thing, but really this overlaps with science because this is one of those big, deep histories, and those tend to include things from the historical sciences, which is the case here because what this is, so far as I can tell, and I've already sort of dipped into this, it looks like there's three things going on. One, one of the narrative strands is it's a geological history of the North American continent. Okay, so there's the deep history part. And then the second narrative strand here is the author going on various treks with geologists. So telling kind of stories there about what they encounter, these kinds of things, and then describing some of the personalities of these geologists, geophysicists. And then the third strand is incorporating, the sort of settlement of the American West, for instance, and all the tragic consequences that followed from that. So I am very much looking forward to reading this. I got high hopes for this because, again, this kind of thing is right up my alley. Annals of the Former World. And this is probably what I'm going to prioritize in terms of if I read anything next that's out of this haul. I mean, because, I guess I already did with the Ways of Herodotus, but this would be the next thing. Okay, that's it. Oh, no, I've gone on long. All right, this will be a regular thing insofar as when I go somewhere and I get a big book haul, I will do these kinds of videos. All right, so that's it. So I have a audiobook review that's in the works, and that'll be my next video. It won't be a big thing. It'll be more produced than this, okay? But not going to be a huge thing, so be on the lookout for that next. Okay, that's all I've got for you. Take care for now.